watch and wait.
The jury indicates they want to go home.
A third day of deliberations is now over.
One possibility is they're just really taking this seriously.
What could this mean for a verdict?
It really can go either way.
As the future of two families hangs in the balance.
Mr. O'Keefe, would you like to say anything about just how long this is taking? Not yet?
Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed murder trial, starts right now.
A third day of deliberations without a verdict. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Glenn Jones.
I'm J.C. Monahan. The case against Karen Reed has been in the jury's hands for a total of about 16 hours. As the anticipation of their verdict grows, so do the crowds of people outside.
Our team of reporters outside the courthouse today tell us there was an increased police presence, along with an uptick in tensions, as we all wait for the verdict.
So tonight we have two legal experts in studio to answer your questions about deliberations and what could happen afterwards. We want to begin, though, with Kirsten Glavin live in Dedham.
Hey, good evening. A lot of disappointment here today. A number of people were hopeful that a verdict would come down. But some legal experts say this might actually be a good thing. Deliberations in the Karen Reed murder trial now set to enter day 4 after jurors coming back on Thursday with no verdict.
The jury indicates they want to go home.
Karen Reed and her team leaving the courthouse silently, refusing to take any questions. The O'Keefe family also leaving quietly, saying they don't have a comment just yet. Mr. O'Keefe, would you like to say anything about just how long this is taking? Not yet? All 3 charges still on the table. Second-degree murder, manslaughter while operating a motor vehicle under the influence of liquor, and leaving a scene of personal injury and death.
Proof in this case is on the
On Tuesday, Judge Beverly Cannoni giving jurors instructions on factors they must consider, and some are challenging.
Now, you've heard some evidence suggesting that the Commonwealth did not conduct certain scientific tests or otherwise follow standard procedure during the police investigation. This is a factor you may consider in evaluating the evidence presented in this case.
Defense attorney Alan Jackson leaving jurors with 4 words during closing arguments that he said summed up this trial: look the other way. Assistant District Attorney Adam Lally reiterating that damning phrase, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Karen Reed is innocent.
There is no conspiracy. There is no cover-up.
Law expert Chris Dearborn says there are several reasons this is taking as long as it is.
One possibility is they're just really taking this seriously.
Adding that there's a lot to sort through.
Jurors today have really high expectations around sort of what I call the CSI factor, and the Commonwealth lost the CSI battle, and it wasn't even close.
Now, the environment out here was also different today. As Glenn mentioned, there were a number of state troopers out here guarding the courthouse, more than what we've seen in the past. There were a couple streets that were blocked down around the courthouse as well. And overall, I think it's fair to say anticipation for a verdict is now at an all-time high. Glenn, Priscilla?
Everything
Glenn and JC.
Everything reconvenes there tomorrow, Kirsten. Thank you. Back here in studio with us is courtroom insider and commentator Sue O'Connell. Sue, you know patience is not my best virtue.
I've heard
how are people outside the court doing on that virtue?
Yeah, there's a level of disappointment and anticipation that I think, Kirsten talked about too, but it's now another day where they expected something to happen. It felt a little bit like there was some air out of the balloon. Things weren't as festive. There were still the same number of people there. I don't think that changed. I went to a courthouse across the street from the courthouse where the trial is to get a soda and use the restroom, and downstairs there's kind of a common area where people can gather, and some people who are Karen Reed supporters were like, what's taking so long? What's happening? And I'm sort of like, it's not like television. It's not like Law and Order, where it starts, it goes on, and then it ends. So there's just this anticipation, and this worry is creeping in for the Karen Reed supporters. Now, I'm only talking about them because they're the only people there, right? There aren't any other O'Keefe folks who I've talked to. I'm walking around not just where the people are that are supporting Karen Reed, but through Dedham and around. So that's what I'm hearing from them. But there is this sort of anxiety, and Karen is and the team are not engaging with the crowd as much as they had in the past. I think that's just to keep her energy level up and to keep herself sane. I'm just guessing there, but yeah, there's definitely a different feeling outside.
Well, and Kirsten tried to reach out to, I believe, John O'Keefe's father, who was not ready to say anything yet. what we do have this expectation of it happening so fast. You called it the Law and Order.
Yeah.
You know, you're heard in Kirsten's packing the CSI kind of thing. So I've noticed it too. But is it a negative energy that you're feeling? Like, come on, let's get this over with? Because there are this is a significant, someone died and someone's life is on the line.
Right, and if you've ever served
freedom.
served on a jury, I served on a rape case jury, and it's a tremendous responsibility and weight that you have, that you're making a decision that is impacting two people's lives and their families and everything that goes along with it. So I definitely think that the crowd is getting that, but there is now this anxiety that's slipping in that, okay, so yesterday I said, take a breath, they're reviewing the evidence, and they're like, well, now there were no questions today. What are they doing? Are they still reviewing the evidence? Maybe they are. And, we're not used to the lack of information, right? We are used to looking at our phone to track our packages. When is our Dunkin' Donuts coffee going to be ready? Let me know right now. And we have no information. So people are also dealing with that sort of anxiety where their brains are waiting for that dopamine hit to find out if something happened. So it's an interesting dynamic that's happening.
For this jury, do you suspect they're able to see all the people there and actually hear them on the other side of the wall? And what impact does that have on them, do you think?
That's a great question, Glenn, because you can definitely hear them, right? So even if Karen Reed and her team, they're staying at a church across steps a half a block away from the courthouse. That's where they're camped out. Anytime that the crowd thinks that Karen is coming out, they scream. When she does come out, there's screaming, there's yelling, there's
a commotion.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can hear it when I'm in one of the other rooms in the back of the courthouse. So I'm sure the jurors can hear it as well.
Wow.
And plus, they're real people, right? So they might be driving through Dedham at other times and hearing, just seeing those things. They can't avoid it. I don't know if that's impacting them. We'll find out if some of them talk to us when the case is done.
Wow.
Okay. Sue O'Connell, thank you.
You're welcome. Sue.
Still ahead, 2 local attorneys will join us here at the table as we take a closer look at the lesser charges Karen Reed is facing.
The jury received very specific instructions before deliberations began. After the break, what our experts think could be delaying their decision. Welcome back. The questions continue. When will there be a verdict? What's taking so long? Well, joining us now are 2 of our legal experts, Morgietta Dourcier and Catherine Loftus. Let's start with the charges. Ladies, the most serious is second-degree murder. Catherine, what needs to be proven by the prosecution for them to convict on that?
So the most important element of second-degree murder is intent. So you have to show that Karen Reed intentionally backed up into John O'Keefe, not necessarily causing him death, but causing the injury, which then subsequently caused his death. And I think that's what has really been hung up on for a lot of people watching the case, is that as the Commonwealth presented their case, we didn't really see any evidence of intent. So I think it's my opinion that that's really taken off the table. I think most people watching it, most attorneys looking at it, I don't think there's any possibility they come back with a second degree. But the manslaughter and the lesser included, I bet that's what the jury is really going back and forth on.
Let's walk through those.
All right, Morgietta, let's talk about the second charge then. This one is motor vehicle manslaughter while under the influence. There are 2 lesser charges included with this. The first is involuntary manslaughter, which requires the jury to believe Reed caused O'Keefe's death. She intended to do the conduct that caused his death, and her actions were wanton or reckless. So, Morgietta, what about the burden on that one? Do you think the prosecution reached it?
And I think, like my colleague here said, the intent element on the first 2 charges is going to be really difficult, right? They're going to have to believe the factual information that was presented, that Karen actually meant to do this, that this was something that she thought about, planned, and was intending on having going forward. I think they're still a little bit short on the intent part. And as I said earlier in the week, it's each and every element, not 1 or 2 or the other one. They have to do each and every one. So if there's a little piece missing, then they miss that mark.
All right, to find her guilty on motor vehicle homicide, they basically have to believe she drove the car, she drove it on a public way, she was under the influence of alcohol, and she drove in a negligent manner that led to the death of John O'Keefe. When I look at that, and I think what could hang up the jury, you have to fully believe that he died because she hit him with the car.
Absolutely. So there's really two ways the jury is looking at it. And you either believe the experts from the defense that there's no way he could have been hit by this car, or you believe the Commonwealth that he was. And if you do believe that he was, then you're looking at what was her behavior that night, and did she engage in the actions which caused that? Or you're on the defense side when saying we don't believe he was even injured by this. And really there is a middle ground, although it wasn't really argued in the closing arguments about the police investigation and the reasonable doubt that arises there. It was really a full-blown third-party culprit theory. So those were the two real theories presented to the jury to deliberate on.
Just to Morgietta's point here, what you're saying basically is they can say, yes, she drove the car. You can say, yes, it was on a public way. Yes, she was under the influence of alcohol. But that fourth piece, again, is the one that hitting him is why he died. So 3 is not enough. You need the fourth.
Right, absolutely. You need all of them. And I think also just focusing on that negligent piece, right? Again, as my colleague said, they have to believe the factual information that the prosecution presented in that capacity, that she was actually negligent. And what facts can he use to point to that? And they would have to believe that that's true as well.
Well, let's pose this viewer question to both of you, because I think it's a really interesting one. It's from Angie L. She wants to know, in regards to the lesser charges, what would be considered a win for Karen Read, besides, of course, totally not guilty? Is there a way where she's convicted on something, but her defense team still considers it a win?
Well, it depends on what you consider a win. From their perspective, that she's being framed, and this is something that happened inside the house, all of the charges require culpability being assigned to her, to Karen Read for John O'Keefe's death. So I would say, based on what their theory is, that she absolutely did not do this and that he was killed inside the house, anything she gets convicted on is not a win for them.
So
because
exoneration is the only way to win.
Exoneration or a hung jury, which gets them to potentially try the case over. But I think any of the lesser included, I mean, that means the jury assigns guilt to her.
I agree. I think the only way really out of this, outside of an acquittal, is a hung jury, right? That means that they at least got a few members to believe their theory, even though they didn't have to really present one. But other than that, they need a not guilty all the way.
What about the leaving the scene? That's a charge also. Is that the lowest level charge that she's facing?
That's the lowest. So it's leaving the scene. I believe it's a serious bodily injury or death. But you still have to show that she knowingly left the scene with somebody there who was injured. So you still have to get into her mental status, and really that still assigns guilt to her, that she knew he was there, that she knew he was injured, and she left anyway. So really, any of the charges against her, I would not consider a win for the defense if she's found guilty of any of them.
If it's a hung jury, do we go through this again?
Okay, so in theory, yes, the prosecution can retry this case again, but let's just take one step back, right? This was already 8 weeks, and it's been in the media. There were a lot of inconsistencies, regardless of who you guilty or not guilty. You cannot disagree with the inconsistencies, and some of the information that just came up really questionable. So I would be very surprised.
Okay.
I actually disagree. Yes, I do. I think they'd retry. I think they drop the second degree and they go on just the manslaughter while driving under the influence. And the thing about the Commonwealth getting a second bite at the apple is they can really reshape their whole case. They don't have to present it in the same way. They can call less witnesses. They can call different witnesses from their list that they didn't present the first time. They can focus on what the errors were and how to ask them different questions in a different way. They could assign a different prosecutor. So I think, based on the fact that this is a Boston police officer, there's a victim's family here. We have to remember that the Commonwealth doesn't just say go. So I think they kick the second degree and they go on the manslaughter if it's a mistrial.
You just blew my mind a little bit, I must tell you.
Okay. Buckle up, everybody. Don't forget, send us any questions you may have for one of our experts. Send us an email at canton.confidential@nbcuni.com. Despite watching this trial from beginning to end, it is nearly impossible to predict how long a jury will take to reach its decision and issue a verdict.
From outside the courtroom, it can be easy to forget how much weight a verdict carries on how much evidence has to be combed through before reaching a unanimous decision. For some perspective, our Michael Rosenfield with a look at other notable cases.
Yeah, Glenn, we've seen a lot of big cases in the spotlight around here in recent years. Sometimes the jury comes back very quickly, and sometimes it can take a while.
As the jurors in the Karen Reed case go home without a verdict, legal experts say you can't read much into which way a jury is leaning based on how long they deliberate.
It's not like some trials where they have the smoking gun and they have the aha moment and you kind of know exactly what went on.
Criminal defense attorney Peter Ellikin says each juror will likely have a lot to say given so many witnesses and exhibits.
We've all been talking about this case, gossiping about it, listening to experts. It's been very much in the news. The jurors have never been able to talk about this at all.
High-profile cases have varied in terms of how long the jurors were out. In the Aaron Hernandez trials, he was found guilty of killing Odin Lloyd after about 36 hours of deliberations. But he was found not guilty of killing Safiro Furtado and Daniel D'Abreu in roughly the same amount of time. Emmanuel Lopes was found guilty of killing a police officer and a bystander after a week of deliberations. This after his first trial ended with a hung jury. And Adam Montgomery, who was convicted of killing his daughter Harmony, was found guilty in just about 8 hours. Cases in the spotlight can be distracting for jurors. Legal analyst Michael Coyne says he's confident the jury can put aside the frenzy, including the dozens of Karen Reed supporters outside the courthouse.
I don't see how the jurors could miss the hoopla. I mean, it's akin to tailgating at a rock concert.
So in this case so far, the jurors have been at it for about 15 hours or so. We'll see what happens tomorrow and if a verdict can be reached or if this stretches into next week. We're live in Dedham tonight. Michael Rosenfield, NBC 10 Boston.
Michael, thank you for that perspective. Coming up on Canton Confidential, our legal experts return to the table to answer your questions.
With deliberations stretching into a fourth day, is there a point when the judge can step in? We'll ask Catherine and Morgietta about that. And if you'd like to check out other questions our experts have answered, we've put them all in one place on our website. Just scan the QR code on your screen or head to NBC10Boston.com and click on the Karen Reed tab right at the top. We'll be right back. Back here at the table with us are local attorneys Morgietta Durissier and Catherine Loftus. Before we go, we have a couple more viewer questions. Why don't we go for it? They're specifically about what happens when the jury struggles. Morgietta, we'll have the first one answered by you. This is from Tyler D. He wants to know, can the judge use an Allen charge if the jury in the Karen Reed case is deadlocked?
Absolutely. So, judges want to encourage juries to come through with a verdict, right? Because they've worked so hard. They've been in the chambers for many, many weeks, especially this particular case. So I've seen and heard where the judge will encourage them to go back and see if one more time they can come with a unanimous vote. Not sure if that's going to happen in this case, but only time will tell.
Okay.
All right, another question. This is Melissa B. Thank you for writing in. She asks, is there a time limit as to how long they can deliberate before the court decides they are deadlocked, and who would make that decision?
So there's not a hard and fast rule about the time limit, how long before the judge declares a mistrial. What happens is basically they would come back, say we're in an impasse, they read the charge, go back, deliberate some more. If they still can't come to an agreement, the judge will inquire of everybody and essentially declare a mistrial. It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, the factor here is that the 4th of July weekend is coming up, so they probably would only go till Thursday, have Thursday, Friday off. Go to Wednesday, have Thursday, Friday off, and come the next week if so. Ooh. So because you have to get the impasse to the judge, have the jury instruction for Tui Rodriguez that says, go back, you're in the best position to make this decision. You have all the evidence. You're the best people in the world. You 12 people, so make the decision. And if they can't, you're probably coming up on 2 weeks before she declares
a mistrial.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's what is similar to the Chesners. We were right around the two-week mark.
And
right.
Both of you said during the break, based on where we are right now, you expect we'll be deliberating into next week at a minimum.
Absolutely. And I think the way that, especially since the jury has been ending a little bit early each day, they're really taking their time to go through the facts and go through the evidence. I would not be surprised if we're here Monday and Tuesday.
We can't obviously read their minds, but having seen this entire case, which piece do you think is the hardest for a jury to come together on? Is it just simply that she did it? Is it the investigation? Do you see what piece of the puzzle is the hardest to put in?
It's probably that they're just like the outside, everybody who's looking at this from the outside, and people have really strong opinions. So there might be, a handful of people that really believe the defense theory, like, no, she did not do this. Something happened inside the house. And then you have the other half that say, no, we think she did. And how do you come to an agreement between that? Because those are really two very, very different theories. We're not talking about, did somebody hit somebody, and did she hit him with a fist, or did she hit him with a shoe, so it's a dangerous, it's not that kind of question.
Right.
This is like, really, you either believe she hit him or you don't. And that's an impasse that's pretty hard to break.
All right, ladies, thank you very much.
Sounds like we're going to be talking more
soon.
about this. Thank you for joining us for Canton Confidential. Another day of deliberations begins 9 a.m. tomorrow.
And we'll see you here tomorrow night at 7. Have a good night.